everyone. My name is Amanda Stein. I'm an MFT associate and a member of the legislative committee. Embarrassed to say I don't really know what a lobbyist does, so I was hoping you could say a little bit about a lobbyist's job.
Happy to. I think a lot of people think that a lobbyist flies around in a big jet and carries bags of cash to politicians, but that's not the case. We work really, really hard to be the moderator or the middleman between individuals who have a need and the legislators or the regulators who are trying to fill a need. So for instance, we heard from the communities that they really needed help getting more individuals licensed. We had a big backup of individuals trying to come into Washington. They were waiting a very long time to get licensure. The state at the same time is seeing a huge backup of demand and people needing access to mental health services. So we all got together and said, how can we alleviate the problem? And the way we did that was running Senate Bill 5054. And that allowed for the legislature to create rules and regulations around reciprocity of licensure so that we can get more people in quicker, but also alleviate the demand of folks needing services.
Great.
So I always think of it as a middleman.
Great. How did you come to this career path?
Very long story, so I'll make it very short.
Okay.
I grew up in a very tough family. I have 8 brothers and sisters who I love dearly, but it was just a very tough time for my family when I became 16. So I started to work with the legislator to get emancipated because emancipation laws were not in Washington at that point.
Okay.
And lo and behold, I ended up going through that process and I realized that I have a voice that I'm not afraid to use. Along the way, I met a lot of folks who were afraid to use their voice or weren't comfortable using their voice or maybe didn't even know how to use their voice. And at that point, I realized had somebody not spoke up for me, I would not be where I am today, and nor should I be where I am today. And I took that as a very serious calling, and I decided to spend the rest of my career being that voice for individuals who can't find it or have time for it, or, for some people it's intimidating.
Absolutely.
Speaking in front of folks is not comfortable for everyone, and I have no fear of it. So I just decided that that's what I would do.
That's amazing. We're so lucky to have you.
It's been a fun time.
Do you have any sort of parameters that you use to decide who you might or might not work with for different groups?
I think every lobbyist has to gut check themselves every now and then. There are issues of every nature that come before Olympia or any state capital or even the Congress. And I think as a lobbyist, you really have to figure out where your moral compass is. And everyone's is different. So whether I agree with your compass or not, or if you don't like mine, that's beside the point. But I think most lobbyists have to go where their compass directs them. There are certain issues that I will not represent, but there are a handful of issues that I would love to represent. I am now at a point in my career where I get to choose who I work with, but it's really hard coming into this field as a young lobbyist or even starting out as what we call a junior lobbyist. You kind of have to take what walks through your door, but if you can hold true to yourself, everything will fall out right.
Yeah, that's great that you do have some choice in that now, though.
Yes, it's a lot easier.
Empowering.
After 20 years, it's a lot easier.
Awesome. So you've been working with us since 2014, and what do you have some proudest accomplishments that you feel like you've had along the way?
I think the moment that will define my relationship with WAMP, and I know we'll do a lot of great things in the future, but I think the moment that when the association and the board voted to really work aggressively, publicly, and in support of banning conversion therapy, that was the moment I think I'll look back at my career and say, I remember when we stood tall, because it wasn't an easy task. There were folks who did not support banning conversion therapy, both within the association and in the public in general. It's a very hard topic to discuss. The hearings were very gut-wrenching of children who had been put through it, adults who remember living through it themselves. It was really, really difficult, but the board stood very loud and firm and said, we will support this, and we were one of the large advocates that were very vocal. We were at every hearing supporting Senator Lobbyist in his quest to get this out of our state. And that'll be one of the moments that when I look back, I'll say, I remember when, and I got to be a part of that, and I know we saved a lot of children.
Amazing.
So,
thank you. Another recent win is the passing of the reciprocity, license reciprocity. Could you say a little bit more about what next steps might be for when bills like that do get passed.
Yeah, so after the governor signs the bill, it'll get assigned to the agency of jurisdiction. So on this bill, it'll be a little bit of Department of Licensing, but a little bit of it of Department of Health. But the Department of Licensing will really be tasked with looking at state by state and saying which states have similar licensure rights and educational equivalents and which ones don't, and how do we get those folks through that, look very similar to Washington's educational standard. How do we evaluate those that maybe are on the cusp of our educational standards and training requirements, and does that term meet the same term as ours here in the state? But the rulemaking process can be kind of burdensome. It's a little slow, but I think the governor, when he signed the bill, he made it very clear that this was a priority to get as many people licensed in our state and get those practicing wherever we can get them.
Yeah.
We have a huge demand of mental health services in our state, and it's only getting worse, as we all see in our communities. And so I think the department will work really, really fast to say, okay, the governor and the legislature gave us the authority to create the rules. So now they're gonna go out and say, under which rules people can use that reciprocity law and come into the state and start practicing.
Great. Well, as someone who very recently got approved for licensure here, transferring from California, I wholeheartedly support that.
It'll be good. I really think that we have a lot of good folks who, one, want to come to Washington. It's a beautiful state. We have great seasons. We have great recreational. We have great life-work balance opportunities in Washington, and I think people will want to be here.
Yes.
And so I think that that'll be a draw. Now that people realize that they can move here and practice pretty rapidly, they'll come.
Fantastic. Thanks. I think that's it.
Perfect.